Hey guys, this is Bert Knows Everything, question, answer, and comments number 2. Cindy Lou asks,
I can't play but 10 chords. Have you placed your guitar playing brain into a microchip yet? If so, when will this be available for purchase?
I draw a pretty hard line when it comes to robots. However, I do wish I could download the things that I know into other people's brains. I'll keep you posted. Joe Feipel asks,
Here's one for your next Q&A. Why did you switch from guitar to bass? Miss you, buddy.
so somewhere around 2008 or 2009, a gentleman approached me and offered to trade lessons for an instrument that he had. That instrument ended up being a 1957 KM1 upright bass. Now K's at the time had a real special reputation amongst the rockabilly community. They were really highly regarded as an excellent instrument, and indeed the 57 that I ended up taking on trade was a fantastic instrument. So I had an upright bass laying around the house, and I was playing guitar at the time in a band called Six Shooter. I ended up finding side work as a bass player with a number of bands because there just aren't a lot of bass players. And honestly, I was pretty good at it. At the behest of my wife, I ended up taking a job full-time playing bass. I ended up leaving Six Shooter. I ended up playing bass with a local rockabilly band. I ended up buying an electric bass too because some of the songs needed both, one or the other. I traveled quite a bit playing bass because there was just so many more bass gigs. There's so many great guitar players in the world. They oftentimes need people to back them up, and I'm very happy playing that backup position to really great musicians. I love being in a room full of musicians and learning something. It's that old saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, get out of that room. Well, it's the same thing for musicians. If you're the best player in that room, get out. Go find better players to study under, to work with, to create with. That's at least my philosophy, and so far it's done right. In 1 year, I was on the West Coast, and the following year I was on the East Coast. Just touring around and playing gigs, doing corporate acts. I toured down south with Whitey Morgan. It opened up so many possibilities playing bass. Then it seemed like the tide turned. They needed great guitar players all of a sudden. There's a whole mess of bands that were looking for guitar players. So my last couple of years in Michigan were spent playing guitar, which is my first love. I enjoy the guitar a lot. I do enjoy the bass too. It's a great meeting of meter and melody that just makes my heart happy. But I do love cutting loose and ripping on the guitar too. And I'm glad that now I'm sort of at the point in my life where I can choose the bass gigs over the guitar gigs, or the guitar gigs over the bass gigs, depending on what makes me happier. I will be doing a number of bass gigs backing up Carl Bradychuk and playing along with Don Denniston. Those guys, I'll play anything they ask me to play, whatever instrument it is and whatever song it is. I love playing with those guys. Cindy Lou hires me to play guitar, and I love backing her up on guitar. My own trio down here, the Moderns, is a real trip. I love working with Mike and Nick. Being back in guitar, it just does feel like home. But that being said, the ultimate reason why I switched to bass for so long was because I made a whole lot more money doing it.
Laid back. With my mind on my money and my money on my mind.
As a working musician, you got to take the money gigs when you can. You don't make it 12 years on just hopes and dreams. Shay Sullivan asks,
Hi, Bear. I got my dude his dream guitar for his birthday, but he barely ever picks it up. How do I encourage him to be more disciplined in practicing without the threat of physical violence? We are into very different styles of music, so I don't think duets are an option.
So this falls under the category of just staying motivated. And I can relate. My wife isn't a musician, but she is a very creative person, and she's very organized in a different way. We actually complement each other very well. When Steph and I were just around 20, I was still living with my parents, and she with hers, just down the street. She worked a job that put her off around midnight, and I ended up, I was teaching guitar at the time, so I was off around 8 o'clock. If I didn't have a gig, I was home back at my parents' place and usually just playing guitar. I was going back to school, and I was working in a practice regimen that was pretty intense because I had every intention on transferring to Berkeley at some point. Stephanie would come to my parents' house when I lived there, and if I wasn't done with my practice regimen, which involved 3 hours of broken up time, there was transcription time, about somewhere around 30 to 40 minutes of just scale work out of a book that was doing different intervals and doing different tempos, all this done to a metronome, by the way, and at least an hour and a half to 2 hours of straight sight reading, because sight reading was really important to me. I came from playing accordion, it was my first instrument, so I actually had a real strong background in reading, but reading on guitar is a very, very different animal, and it requires a lot more patience and practice. And if Stephanie got off work early, or if my practice regimen was pushed back late, she used to have to sit and watch me sight read. She would bring a book or she'd watch TV or something until I was finished with my sight reading That was it. And she put up with all that stuff because she knew how serious I took it. When my priorities changed and I found myself taking more science-based classes and pursuing a bachelor's in science, I found a lot of that stuff took the back seat, and I was just left with the bare minimum that made me happy in the guitar, which was playing enough of the guitar to get gigs, to playing solos, singing my own little songs, and writing my own little bits here and there that made me really happy. So back to what you're asking, if his musical happiness is detrimental to your happiness, then I suggest that you encourage him in ways that may not seem conventional. You mentioned that your styles of music are different. Well, you might want to come out of your own comfort zone and figure out where the middle ground is. I know that Stephanie from time to time will sit down, we'll write a song together, just mostly fun stuff while we're having a couple of cocktails for laughs. But it does mean a lot to me that I have another person who's describing who's using descriptors that aren't exactly musical, that aren't exactly textbook, to try to get me to create these sounds. And I found that that was really fun and an engaging way after hours to get me to play guitar, because I do suffer from burnout like everybody else. There are times when I get off work and the last thing I want to do is play any more scales, run up and down, or even listen to a metronome. And I get fatigued too. But it's all about sort of keeping it fun and finding interesting middle grounds between two people. And of course, you're married, you probably know exactly what that's like. I'm married, I know what that's like. Bill Welsh asks,
show us some concepts for some easy chicken picking licks that are finger licking good and tasty. I guess that's more of a statement. So the question is, how do I make chicken picking licks tasty?
It's the Colonel's secret recipe. Chicken grease salt.
You know, I guess the thing is, some of the tastiest licks are the ones that smell funny, so I'd aim for the minor 7. Land on the minor 7 and give that thing an attitude adjustment. Frederick Carbuncle Ferret asks,
Isn't Bert supposed to be blue? Who's this yellow fart?
that's either Grover or Gonzo, you idiot. John Olshavy asks,
What's your approach to phrasing during a solo?
there was a time in my life where I was really, really happy taking a minor pentatonic scale and just wailing on it through blues progressions. I was super happy doing it. It sounded awesome, especially if I got a ton of gain running on my amp. One day, I heard Brian Setzer play the guitar. And while there was a lot of real familiar blues licks and pentatonic licks in there, there was this forward thinking that I had never noticed before in other players. I've noticed it since. It's not like the people I was listening to before didn't have this sort of trait. It was different because the guitar had a totally different attitude to it. It was insane. It was like flipping on a switch. Well, there goes that bulb. It's like flipping on a switch. The thing was, he seemed to be hyper aware of this force that was happening within the music that I wasn't exactly tuned into. And that was the chords. And that hypersensitivity to the chord progression made his solos and his phrases so much more melodic, so much more interesting and engaging. And that was something I wanted to make my own. So I took lessons with as many people as I could. I bought as many books as I could on the subject. I learned as much as I possibly could from transcribing his solos. And I noticed that there was definitely something at work that I wasn't quite catching until I stumbled upon a book called Fretboard Logic. And it dealt entirely with the cage system. Now, I had actually heard about this on YouTube. There's a whole hot bunch of debates over if it's a decent method to learn or not. I'm going to tell you this. Honestly, it is the way the guitar is laid out. So it's really hard when I hear arguments against it that then ultimately don't go right back into its snare, which is the fact that everything you're playing is related to a chord. That is true. Because if you're playing a note that's not within the chord or even the context of the key, that is absolute noise. And that's what we want to avoid. Briefly take you through the cage system, shall we? We have C in its standard form. We know that as a C chord. But then we have C as an A form, C as a G form, then we have C as an E form, and last but not least, C as a D form, which is a little bit tough on this guitar. But it's there. These chord shapes allow you to highlight the 1, 3, 5 of any chord that you can think of. Even when I'm playing over real convoluted chord progressions and chords in general, I'm always relating it back to something within the cage system because there's always going to be a triad somewhere within it. I'm going to go ahead and just pretend everything's in the key of A for right now. Here's a wonderful A. I chose A in the E form just because that's where my brain goes. And we're going to talk about a 1-4-5 progression. I know that sounds like shooting fish in a barrel, but we'll start there. I'll do another chord progression after this to show you what my thinking is. With that cage system, I can play the A, the D, the E in one position. I can also play them in all positions. It doesn't matter. No matter where I am on the fingerboard, I can relate back to those 3 chords. That's the most important part. And what I do from there is I internalize the things that change. For instance, out of my A, I'm going to play just the top 4 strings right now. What I got, A, C sharp, E, and A. Okay. Into a D chord, that changes. That C sharp becomes a D. It raises up a half step. And that, what is that? That E to my ear becomes what? That's going to be an F sharp now. But that A remains the same. That's a pedal tone between the 2 chords. So when I'm playing a lick that's going A to D, in other words, 1 to 4, I'm paying attention to taking that major third and raising it up a half step, and taking that 5th and raising it up a whole step. Now that becomes the new 5th and the new major third respectively, and I pay very close attention to that because part of my playing is always aiming for that major third. That's a big deal. So I want to make sure that I'm really highly aware of that when I'm playing over the changing chords. And that may have been a big jump because I was going between the major thirds and the major third there. That's a better one. That to my ear sounds like a slightly better melody. Granted, it's still a little fancy, but that's me jumping up to the major third of the following chord, okay? If you take a major triad, let's say we're playing over the 5 chord, the E, and you rock that back a whole step, of course I do the slide thing, you end up with a pretty interesting, I think it's a dominant 9 chord. Let's double check. So E, that would be, we have B, we got E, we got G sharp. We slide it back. We end up with a D, which is the 7th. We end up, that should be, if it's behind the 5, a 4, I would imagine, which is going to be a suspension sound. So this is B, that's now A. And then this guy up top is the 9th. And I overuse that a lot. That's all over Albert Lee's playing too that I've noticed. Okay, Bert, enough 145. How is this useful outside the world of blues? I play folk or I play metalcore. I don't care what it is. How can I use it? So let's do this over a chord progression that we'll use a 1 chord. We'll think minor now. A minor, G, how about F, E7. That 5 chord is ever present. You want to make sure that you're really comfortable playing over it because it's one of the best ways to set up the return to the 1 chord. We like it so much that even in our Western music, we take and we alter the scale to make sure that we have a dominant 5 chord in the same spot that we do a major and a minor chord progression. Think about how strong that harmony is. But over those chords, that A minor, that G major, that F, if I can think through this, and then that E, then back to A minor, or A minor here. I'm always taking a moment to think about the chord tones that are changing to the next chord. And then I'm trying to think about a melody line that's going to tie those things together. So, for instance, I know that I want to land on an A when I'm playing over A minor. I just pick that chord tone out of nowhere. I could pick C. Let's pick C instead. The next note that comes to me is going to be B because I see that G coming on the horizon. And I'll just go ahead and complete the triad. Okay, and I have an F on the horizon. It's coming. There's nothing I can do to stop it. The band's going to go there. I'm looking for F, A, and C. I know for a fact that the note that I'm on right now is a D. Okay, I have a C directly behind me, which might not be the best note, and I can tell you why, because C is a 5th against the F. It's not going to give you the most color in the tone. Why don't I try to hunt down an A instead, okay? So if I'm on D, I now have to think of a melody line that's going to take me to an A. I can go up, I can go down. I just got done going down, so I'm going to try to walk it up, because that was I went down there. So let's think about it now. If I'm thinking broader in the terms of A minor, I know that I have an A minor pentatonic at my disposal. I know that I have E right here. I've got F, I've got G, I've got A, which is a nice one. So if I'm going to go... What's great is that choosing to go up to the A note was really a wise decision, because then it added me back to go play this G sharp, because it had me go back to this G sharp over the E chord, which is the harmonic minor, the major 7th against the A, and I could resolve it really hard. And that was just me choosing chord tones at random, really, but highlighting the 3rd, because that's when you think in terms of triads like this, which I suggest everybody do at first. Then you can begin to see these little chords and begin to see how they change and interplay with each other. One thing I failed to mention in all this is that when you're ultimately trying to build your melody line, play your solo without any accompaniment and see if your ear fills in the gaps for the chords that are missing. The other real big tool in my box is the fact that I have all of my scales and my chords and my arpeggios, locked in here. One skill that I learned that I had early on is I can memorize stuff pretty easily, and I can keep it locked away pretty tightly. I was not a very good student, but I was really good at memorizing facts and just spitting them back out. But I got that out of the way quick, and I highly suggest anyone watching this video take the time to memorize all your keys, all your scales, the appropriate arpeggios, at least the 1, 4, 5 of each of those, and really take that to heart, because I like knowing what note I land on. I like the notes that comprise my licks, and I like knowing them innately. This is a language, and I want to be a part of that conversation, and I want you to be a part of that conversation, and I want to have a smart conversation. Hey guys, I certainly had a lot of fun answering your questions. If you have any more, please leave them in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to also include a link to my Patreon. That's right, it is live. If you enjoy this sort of content and want to see this and help that ensures that it gets out regularly, please take a moment and think about supporting the channel. To me, I think about it like a digital tip jar. Throw $1 in every month. It'd mean the world to me. Thank you so much. I will see you next time. And then we have C as a G form. Whoa! I'm in drop D. Rule number 1, make sure the guitar you grab for demonstration's in tune.